in here. I'm here to talk to you after this song. All right, how's everybody doing today? Long time no hear. I apologize. I've been trying to get some people on the air here to tell their stories and to give some extra information, but sometimes it's kind of hard to get people down. So we're hoping that someone can come this weekend, a former foster child, and tell her story. It's really, really important that we get people out here, because I can tell you, as a former foster child and as a mom who has a child in the foster care system, there's a lot of stigma. I mean, Parents are going out there, saying their stories, really wanting people to listen to what's going on with taxpayers' money, on what the government is focusing on. And it's not focusing on keeping families together. It is definitely an illusion. I was pretty surprised when I was on the bus the other day, after giving all the statistics, which are on our webpage there on Facebook, of how kids are doing in the foster care system. They're staggering. And many, many people don't know. They just sort of have a trust that the government or child protection services, or, that they're taking care of the kids, that everything's good, that everybody's well trained. I mean, they hear a story here and there, but they think it's a small amount. Maybe that's what makes them feel comfortable. But we're here to let everybody know what's going on in the foster care system. Let them know that that they can make a difference if they pressure their politicians to do what is right. So we're kind of focusing a little bit on bullying. It's kind of an illusion, because when it's happening to you, you don't even quite see it as that until you kind of look back on it. I also want to talk about what happens with kids and how they're pressured to do what the caseworker or the social worker or the foster home or group home staff get them to do. My most recent situation with my child was that we were both being pretty traumatized. He had been in the U12 program here in Calgary, and he had been moved from Hull Family Services, and I'll get into that story later. That caused a lot of grief and heartache for my son and I. But in the U12 program, it was incredibly disorganized. The staff were not trained to look after traumatized children. I mean, even for example, they wouldn't even have dinner ready sometimes till 7:30. I made a big stink about it, stating that kids need consistency. They need to know when they're going to have dinner, and especially with kids with behavioral issues, hunger can make it way worse. So my situation is a little bit different, because I feel that the bullying that happened with our family had a lot to do with speaking out. My child was an FSCD child, so that meant in Alberta that he was not under legislation of children's services. They later on got involved, but for the most part, it was just FSCD and me as the guardian, and me coming to the program and working with the staff. And the person who was at Hull, the program that we had been at before, had said in the 25 years that he'd worked there, he'd never seen a parent come as often as I had. And, having FSCD kids and parents in group homes was a fairly new thing. Most of the time, the homes were pretty well tailored for children's services, and that's the way they treated you. So when I went to the U12 program and I noticed all the things that was going on, the children weren't being fed properly. My son actually became significantly underweight and undernourished, and as his pediatrician said, he looked exhausted. So I apologize. Oh, great. Anyways, I didn't realize sorry about that, that before my son and I had come to the U12 program, that Children's Services had actually had some conversations with the staff regarding me, stating that I was a triangulator and a troublemaker and a number of other things. Now, when I tell you my story about what happened at PTP, eventually I will tell you that, you understand that the focus here was on discrediting me. They wanted to discredit me because that way, any information that I gave them that might have them look bad would not be taken seriously. So when I tried to have conversations about some of the concerns I saw in the group home with the director there, she was very condescending and often talked down to me. I remember I'd said in court that no one would ever, if a child was at a daycare or at a babysitter's or anywhere else, no one would ever treat a parent with such disrespect if they had concerns about the organization. It was horrible. So this is sort of the way that they start in their bullying tactics. And with the children, they will often talk to them privately and try to get information out of them and reward them. Or they'll take comments out of context and just write certain things down so that when somebody goes to read it, it sounds, like it's a completely different story than what it's supposed to be. So I guess they had already pretty well started planning on apprehending my child. Being an FSCD child and being in their group home, they could not really take him away from me. And they couldn't say that their home was unsafe. And so they were more busy covering up what was going on at this program than really doing what was right. One time I was with my son and we were talking. And we were talking about gym and one of the classes that was going on. And he said that he hadn't partaken in it. And I said to him, why? And he said, because my arm was hurting really badly. And I said, what happened? He said, well, Janine had bent my arm back so badly that I couldn't even move it. And I was like astounded. I'm like, why didn't you tell your teachers? Or why didn't you tell me? He goes, because every time I tell adults that I'm hurt, nobody does anything about it. And I remember I was just so angry because I knew he was right. We had been locked in a system where he had been in foster care before, or when he's in these programs, that people are more concerned about covering things up than taking action and removing, some of these unethical workers. When my son had come home, he wasn't ready to come home. I'll give the example of, let's say, a child who has cancer. A child goes into the hospital to get better. They have all the things that the child would need to get better. And if it's a good hospital, and if things are in the favor of him getting well, or she, you'll see a lot of improvements. And this did happen when my son was at the former program. He had had significant trauma and emotionally, I don't even know how to explain it. He was just very traumatized, and he was having trouble coping with life. I had taken him to a lot of different programs out in the community, and in the other programs that I was trying to get him into, I wasn't eligible for. So when I had taken him to the PTP program, I was told that they were trauma-based therapy, and that they would help my son get better and help him with his anger. And I was very, very involved. Unfortunately, due to the negligence on their part, my son had to be removed from that program and put into the EP2 program, which would be like the analogy of if you had taken the child that was getting better in the good hospital, and then for some reason that hospital was not available to that child, and you put the child in an institution, another hospital that was dirty, that didn't feed them properly, that didn't have the proper staff, or all the things that the child might need in order to recover, and that child started getting sick again, you can't really blame the parent. The parent had taken the child to the hospital and had been a part of that treatment to help that child get better. So my child was removed from a program that was helping him, and I was very much involved in, to a program that caused him to become underweight, where he was abused and neglected. And my concerns to the caseworker and the team leader and the Hunter Horn office all got ignored. And so when you're always trying to speak up for your child and you're being ignored by everybody that should be listening to you, that should be making changes, especially if a child who has never been underweight to that degree, or undernourished to that degree, and the pediatrician is stating it as a fact, and that the child needs to eat more food, you're gonna see that the child's gonna decline. The child's gonna go downhill, and the parent who desperately wants the child to get better and is willing to do whatever they can in order to help them get better, becomes very discouraged. My son needed a specialized therapy that was approximately $150 an hour. That was said that he absolutely needed, and he was turned down. I went everywhere to try to get him this therapy, and I had doors slammed in my face. I can tell you that if I'd gone out and said, my child has cancer, and the government is not willing to help me pay for this child to get better, I probably would have a flock of people right in front of me handing me money. But because it's mental health, because it's trauma-induced behaviors where the child does not know how to cope, that's what happens, So this is just an introduction to why the bullying happened. And it's about whistleblowing. It's about a parent that speaks up against something that is happening in one of their homes. And they will do absolutely everything that they can to discredit that parent. If the parent has any kind of issues, be it mental health, be it addiction, be it anything. They will try to find something. And so the point I was trying to get across is that when my son had gone to PTP, I was told it would probably take a couple of years before he would get better. And so you remove him from a good program and you put him into an abusive, neglectful, horrible program, the child declines. And the mother declines because all of her concerns are being ignored. And she's told that if the child doesn't get this specialized therapy, it could, be extremely detrimental for him as a teenager and as an adult. So they finally did give somebody to the parent in this specialized therapy. But some of the recommendations that the person made were very, very concerning. And because of the nature of the type of therapy he needed, I'm not going to discuss it too much right now, but the mother had said that she wanted him to be in a better program to help stabilize her son so that the regression that she had seen would get better. And they continued to not provide anything that could help the child get better and support the mother. As a matter of fact, they pretty well forced the child to go home because my son was saying, "Mom, she keeps abusing me, she keeps hurting me. She says really horrible things to me, that I'm going to be nothing, and that my mom hates me." I knew he wasn't ready to come home, and I knew because I had been assaulted and raped by somebody that I was also not doing very well. I'd spent so much time advocating and going everywhere that I could to help my child that I wasn't really taking care of myself. So when my child was kind of forced home with the least amount of supports, it didn't work out. My son has some significant sleep issues, and I have been concerned that he is bipolar, but there's no official diagnosis. So we went through a period of almost a week where my son didn't sleep at all, barely. And so if he didn't sleep, I didn't sleep. And I tried to take him to the hospital. The police even coded him so that he could get, what he needed. And this went on for a week. And then eventually Children's Services ended up taking Jericho. So they ended up putting him in a transitional group home where they had 24-hour extra support staff hired, because it's not okay for the mom to need extra help, but if the group home staff requires extra help, well, they're definitely going to support them keeping the child in the group home rather than supporting keeping the child in the home with the mother. And he was very, very traumatized, to have to go again. And the caseworker was completely uncompassionate, unempathetic. She gave 4 hours once a week for a year and a half. And, legislation and policy states that the caseworker needs to work diligently towards the reunification of the family until the PGO, Permanent Guardianship Order, is granted. So that means that they need to do as much as they can possibly to provide support and anything that can be given to help keep that family together. But you see, they had already had their own agenda. Their agenda was to put my child with somebody that had been his mentor. I'd understood later on that they had been having secret meetings with this person. So when my son had went into custody, I should call it, I had a lot of trust for him, but I didn't know that, that they had had this arrangement. And I had said, I was willing even to go to the point of signing over guardianship so that he could look after my child so my son would not be in this system. I said I was willing to have a parenting order where he could set his own rules. That way, if he had any concerns about me, it was in a court order. I pretty well just wanted to do anything I could to keep my son out of this system that had caused trauma to both of us. But no, he had his own agenda. He didn't really even want me involved with my child anymore. I didn't know that at the time. He would get money if I lost my guardianship and complete control. And eventually, he wouldn't really have to have any accountability to anybody and could do whatever he wanted with my child if he were to have private guardianship or adoption of my child. And there was a lot of financial benefits. I even went on the website and tried to find all the tax breaks, and I even said that I would get a job and I would pay him money. I pretty well begged him to help, but no, again, this was something that Children's Services and him had worked together to kind of maybe even take my hope away. So my son had started going to another program, and it was really, really far away. As a matter of fact, I had to travel an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back. That would be even in 30 below weather. Because I was unable to get a lawyer, I decided I would start working. So I had 2 part-time jobs, and then I would travel to see my son twice a week, do whatever meetings or therapy or other things that I needed. And when I was going to the program, they started to really like me, because again, like they had done at the U12 program, the caseworker had went. I found this out through disclosure, behind my back, writing letters of, what a troublemaker I was and all this other stuff, so that, they had sort of an image in their mind of what kind of person I was. But the problem with them, is that when people get to know me, they realize that many of the things that the caseworker has said about me is untrue. So I diligently went there for a year. I would cook meals. I would buy gifts for the other kids. I'd spend time playing with the other kids. I was even given extra time without the caseworker knowing, so that I could spend time, because the group home staff had really started to get close to me and like me, to the point where they were telling me that they loved me and would hug me. And it was really, really appealing and desirable for me, because I'd never had a family. I'd never had, people show that kind of love and concern for me. They would get me gifts, and And Jericho was so excited, to see, the progress with me, and to see that I was positive and I was working. And I started to have hope that, because I had read all the statistics of this particular program, and that it said that that many kids who had support with this program would end up going home. So I wanted to take part in the reunification part of their program, but I was continually being turned down. And I would continually quote legislation and my rights and say, well, it's supposed to be toward the reunification of the family. Why can't I be given? And the head of the program told me, well, we have to do what Children's Services says because they pay for it. I even said to them, well, you know what? I do charity work. I'll be willing to raise my own money so that I can take part in this reunification program so I can get my kid home. And nope, they couldn't do that either. And I was getting pretty upset because I asked for goals. I said, can you give me goals so that when I go towards the judge, I can show him that I've worked hard at rectifying whatever issues my child and I have, so that he can come home. And he was improving quite a bit. He was put on medication, and unfortunately he has been on medications throughout his life because of his severe sleep and mood issues, but nothing really ever worked. But this particular medication did. He actually went up 2 grade levels. He was sleeping better. His anxiety was significantly lower. But I also noticed that he started gaining a lot of weight, and he only has 2 valves in his heart. So I was concerned about, the way that the group home ate. There was a lot of high-fat, over-processed foods, and I had talked to them about that, bought them books, and they made some effort, but not enough. I mean, my son ended up gaining 70 pounds in just like half a year. That was like a crazy amount. So I wanted them to, to listen to me and to take me seriously, and I'd send them emails and taught, I was going to take my son to this special program that belonged through Alberta Health, but they just kept ignoring me. And then, even though the head of the group home, the teaching parent, would go to the meetings and say to everybody how amazing I was doing and how good I was doing, they refused to continue to give me what I needed so that if I went towards the judge, I could say, see, things are improving and my son can come home. So because my son was eating so poorly and because of the medication, his cholesterol went really high, and we had to take him off the meds. He went into a really, really bad state. I thought it was just the drugs, the medication, coming off of it, but it was actually my son had made a disclosure on October 30th, 2014, that I wasn't able to read till many, many months later. That was very, very concerning. Due to legalities, right now I can't speak about what was said or what happened, but I can tell you that it put significant concern on one of the people that was spending time with him. So just before I had to go to court, I the caseworker had made sure that I could never go back to the program that my son was in. To this day forward, I was never allowed to step forward into that group home ever again. And I know why. Because they had faith in me, and they were speaking good about me, and that was not Children's Services' agenda. So they worked on the next number of months, talking to my son, letting him know that I was unwell and that I needed, supervision for almost 3 years with my child, never being left alone. I think there was only probably a couple of weeks where they decided to give me access to my son without a supervisor. And as soon as I was questioning my son about some concerns that he may have been treated inappropriately by someone that he was with, they immediately put the supervision back on and censored absolutely everything that we could possibly talk about. I was able to privately talk to my son when one of the supervisors went to the bathroom just about maybe 2.5 months ago. And I asked him if the person that was looking after him was now treating him worse now that nobody was watching what was going on. And he said, "Yes, Mom." And also, he would come for our visits and look significantly agitated. And he would pretty well echo the words that said that they were saying that you're not doing very well, and that's why you have to always have supervised visits. And the other person that I had concerns about began to start buying him very expensive gifts, expensive bikes, expensive dinners, expensive glasses, expensive clothes. And yet when this person had looked after my child when he was living with me, he never bought him expensive stuff. It was always things from the Looney store. And as a matter of fact, he never watched my child for free. I always paid him. Sometimes I paid him double the going rate that I was paid on FSCD to give to people who were looking after my child. I guess what I want to say to everyone who's listening, especially the young people, I want you to come forward to tell your story on what happens behind the scenes. I took a video of what happened one night at U12. And I remember one of the supervisors that used to work there with my son said if people only knew what was happening in these homes, he says they would be astounded. And they would. These are what they call the throwaway children. Like in the category that my son was in, these are children with significant behaviors. And the children are not shown or are looked upon with compassion the way another child would be with cancer or with any kind of other sickness. And, trauma and all the things that children can go through that can cause them to act up should be looked upon with great compassion and empathy. And, society invests in these kids to get better. Then we have a better society. That saves us money in many areas for kids who may end up in jail or, end up getting pregnant too early, or any of the other things, getting involved with gangs. If we work on keeping families together and stabilizing children, giving them the things that they need so that they can recover, we have, a much stronger society. And so, like I said at the beginning, if the kids or people who have been in the system, especially here in Alberta, is what we're focusing on, to come forward, say your stories. We have, say, 100 kids that come forward and say, when I was in custody of the government, this caseworker would not listen to my concerns. This caseworker would not protect me. This caseworker would not listen to people in the public or my parents' concerns. They were more concerned about covering things up. If you've got like 100 or 200 kids and young adults that come forward that talk about these people, they're going to have to force them to lose their jobs. Right now, it's very isolated. If people go and complain to the college, we have a story of 2 elderly grandparents who were treated with great disrespect and bullying from the Hunter Horn office. And so they wrote their concerns to the Alberta College of Social Work and waited almost a year and a half to go. And none of those team leads, social workers showed up. And no accountability, no consequences for that. Nothing. So this is what happens, these social workers and team leaders and caseworkers ostracize the family, oppress the children, and treat people with disrespect. And there's nothing that can be done. This is what makes them worse. The less accountability they have, the more in a position that they will continue to do this. And kids end up dead. Like with the example of Samantha Martin. There were many people who had concerns about the child's weight and the injuries that she was experiencing. And, nobody listened. And now the child is no longer alive. And this is what happens. As long as caseworkers aren't being accountable for these children, responsible for protecting them, and rather than protecting themselves, these things are going to continue to happen. So please come forward, tell your stories, be it through poetry, be it through your letters, podcasts, songs, music, anything. And we need you to come forward, and you never know, there might be 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, 20 kids who are telling the same story regarding the foster parent or the social worker or the caseworker, and then we can force change. So come forward. Thanks for listening. This is Sweet and On.